Hey folks, Gway. A couple of days ago, in a meeting over at the church, one of the gentlemen in the meeting, a guy named Victor, like one of those really, really smart guys, he and I were talking about something completely off the topic of politics. I'm not even sure we were talking about religion, to be honest, but he mentioned this quote that he understood, a quote that he had heard or read that spoke to how Napoleon Bonaparte understood the importance of ensuring that the populace of a country you control believes that you share their faith. It turns out, after doing the research, it wasn't something that Napoleon wrote or said directly. It was something that was found in one of the journals of one of Napoleon's generals. The general says, quote, "During the negotiations with the Holy Father, Bonaparte one day said to me, 'In every country religion is useful to the government, and those who govern ought to avail themselves of it to influence mankind. I was a Mahometan in Egypt and a Catholic in France. With relation to the police of the religion of a state, it should be entirely in the hands of the sovereign.'" He gets it though, right? He gets it. He understands that religion matters. Religion matters to the populace of a country. The belief system, so let's even take it away from just the idea of religion. The belief system of a populace matters when it comes to exerting your authority over them, when it comes to controlling them, when it comes to leading them. He goes on, he says, "I was a Mahometan in Egypt. I was a Muslim when I was in Egypt. I made sure that they understood I was a Muslim. I wanted them to see me as such. When I was in France," he says, "I was a Catholic because France is a Catholic country, and I wanted them to make sure they knew I was Catholic." I found this interesting because in the world today, of course, we have many political leaders who are stepping up and trying to avail themselves of the influence of the church. They're trying to garner support from the church. We see this, really the greatest example in the West right now is Donald Trump, as he courts and maintains, inexplicably maintains the support of the more fundamentalist, the more I don't even like using that term, the more fundamentalist right-wing side of the Christian church. He's somehow gotten them to believe that he believes what they believe. He's somehow gotten them to accept that he is one of them, despite having there's no real fruit of the Spirit evident in his public life. Man, they are backing this guy because he understands. He understood that he understood what Napoleon understood, that he needed to garner the support of the dominant religion in the nation if he had any hopes of gaining power, if he had any hopes of becoming president. Now, obviously, Napoleon said it a few hundred years ago to this general. It's not something that is new to Donald Trump. No. We've seen it. We've seen it throughout history. We've seen it long before Napoleon. Julius Caesar understood that he needed the people of Rome to believe that he believed what they believed. Leaders, kings, queens, tyrants, presidents, prime ministers have all needed the population to believe that they believed what the population believed. It makes the population feel like this person, despite the power they hold, despite the position, despite the authority they wield. If they believe what I believe, then our values are aligned. We all want the same thing. And even though they might not go about it the right way, I know that we want the same thing. And even though they may not look the part, I know that we want the same thing. I know that if we're not on the same page, we're at least in the same bloody book. It gives the population a sense of security. When they see a leader misbehave, when they see a leader misstep, when they see a leader abuse the authority that's been given to them, well, at least we're in the same book. With all that being said, Paul, in one of his letters, actually does say, when I'm in Rome, I speak like the Romans. And when I'm in Greece, I speak like the Greeks. Same kind of thing. But Paul was sharing his faith. And that can be, for the record, that can be a very manipulative task. But when Paul says, when I'm in Rome, I speak like the Romans, it wasn't about trying to persuade the Romans and try to fake them out, trying to make the Romans believe that he was something he was not. What Paul's talking about is understanding the culture, understanding the society, speaking their language, living by their customs, immersing themselves in the social norms so that you can better understand how to communicate. For Paul, this wasn't about personal power. This wasn't about gaining something for himself. It was about sharing the good news of Jesus Christ. And again, yes, I completely understand when you say, well, isn't that a kind of manipulation? It can be. And we've certainly, in Christendom, we've seen the proclamation of the gospel become the manipulation Olympics at times. We've seen the proclamation of the gospel, the sharing of God's love be weaponized. But in Paul's day, at the time of writing those letters, all he was saying is, let them know that you understand. Let them know that you understand. And not because you're trying to garner something for yourself, but because you're trying to share this secret with them. You're trying to share this good news with them. You're trying to offer them a path into freedom. That's not what political leaders are doing. That's not what political leaders are doing. And in fairness, this video is not going to be about just simply us saying, okay, well, I guess those political leaders are out there doing it. No, because Christians, people of all faith, really, because we don't just see it in Christendom, we see it across the religious spectrum. I would argue, again, it's not just something that is prevalent in religion. It's prevalent whenever people hold a belief of any kind. Whatever it is they have put their faith in, whatever value, whatever ideal, whatever methodology they have put their faith in, we're susceptible to being manipulated. Very susceptible to being manipulated. And some of us are much more susceptible than others. Again, going back to Paul, going back to the New Testament, Paul and Jesus as well continuously warn us about false teachers, continuously tell us that there are going to be people stepping forward in the name of God in order to have control over you, in order to lead you on a path that is not godly, in order to lead you down a path that leads to destruction, or in order to lead you down a path that is going to lead you away from walking the journey that Jesus would have you walk, living the life that Jesus would have you live. And we must be discerning about that. And that, for me, is exactly why Paul continuously warns us about it. It isn't because he's saying, hey, listen, here's the checklist. Though I did do a video a while back on a decent little checklist on false prophets. It's not that Paul's just trying to talk us into following this checklist. It's that Paul is trying to convince us to keep our friggin' eyes open. He's trying to convince us that, yes, this can happen to you. No, I'm way too smart. I'm following Jesus way too closely. It can happen to you. Keep your eyes open for it. No, it won't ever happen to me. I love God. I love the Lord. I'm doing everything Jesus wants. It can happen to you. Please keep your eyes open. We must be continuously discerning of leadership. We must be continuously discerning of leadership. We must be continuously asking ourselves, is this person for real? Is what this person's saying genuine? Is this person leading me closer to God or not? Now, in the case of politicians, this is especially important. And perhaps, I don't know, I was thinking about Fight Club when I was thinking about this video, and I got thinking about maybe Christians who are running for politics, maybe a good solution for them, for the church, is that if you're a Christian and you are choosing to run for politics, you don't ever never mention that you're a Christian. Right? Number one rule of Fight Club is we don't talk about Fight Club. So, Christian running for power, running for presidency, running for mayor, running for school board, I'm not going to mention that I'm a Christian. I'm not going to tell anybody that I'm a Christian. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work diligently to show the world who I am. So that at the end, when it comes time to cast your vote, if a person's out there saying, geez, I really want to vote for a Christian, their job is going to be to hold up the behaviors and the words and the actions and the promises of the candidates that are involved and say, okay, which one most closely resembles Jesus? Whose work most closely resembles Jesus? Whose past most closely resembles Jesus? Whose promises most closely resembles Jesus? In whom do I see the fruit of the Christian spirit? Because nobody's telling me, so therefore I got to figure it out for myself. Because I'm pretty certain that a Christian who is striving for justice, and who is a person of mercy and compassion and gentleness, a person who is a person of kindness and forbearance and perseverance, and a person who is walking humbly, well, they don't need to tell you that they're a Christian. And if they do tell you that they're a Christian, it's because they really want you to know. And they really want you to know for a really personal reason, because it's part of their agenda. Again, I remember watching this great scene from Game of Thrones, and Joffrey was king, and Joffrey one day, he's freaking out, and he's screaming, I'm the king, I can do whatever I want, I'm the king, I'm the king, I'm the king. And his grandfather, who is his advisor, really kind of a twisted guy, dark character, but wonderfully played by the actor. He says anybody who has to say that they are king is no king. Anybody that has to convince the world that they are a king by telling the world that they are a king over and over and over, you're no king. This is just an idea, of course. And it's probably not one that you're going to see Christian politicians jump on. You're probably not going to see a whole lot of Christians who are running for office say, I'm not going to talk about my faith. I want my faith to be evident in my actions, and I want my faith to be evident in the kind of person you see me to be. Which means it is up to us. And again, we have been manipulated, and our faith has been manipulated since the dawn of time, forever and a day. We have, since Jesus ascended into heaven, and probably before, actually there are stories of Jesus' teachings moving outside of his circle before his crucifixion. We must be so stinking diligent in our discerning, in our critical thinking. We must be aware that we have been warned again and again and again that people are going to try to manipulate us. They're going to lead us down the wrong path for their reasons. They're going to use us. In the world today, there are politicians who are using us, using people of faith, using people of love, using people of compassion, using Christians, using Muslims, using Hinduism. They're out there. And it's not for our good, and it's not for God's glory. It's for their gain. Please be careful. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord's face be made to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord's countenance be lifted up to you. May you always know the peace of being in the Lord's presence. And I pray that our eyes will be open. Our ears will be open. Our hearts will be open. That we'll be people who are looking for the fruit of the Spirit to be evident in the lives of these people who stand up and loudly profess just how Christian they are. These people who loudly profess just how in love with Jesus and the church and in 2 Corinthians they are. So that one day we can be free of the possibility that we're being used. Amen. Nemultus.